What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Redonkulous Gaming. I'd like to talk a little bit about the quote-unquote fix to the Guardian Druid talent tree that went live in this week's beta. Still not live on retail for the pre-patch. I'm hoping it's because they're not done messing around with it yet. But the general reaction that I saw was pretty much two hot takes. One of which was this was a flat-out nerf. Guardian Druid got worse. The other one was, no, this is actually better because look, they went ahead and they buffed Maul and that's going to fix things, which neither are really right. It was actually kind of a net neutral change because you're able to still get a lot of the same talents. But what I will say is they made pathing a little bit more difficult to hit on everything that you're going to need to. So that's enough setup. We'll just kind of jump into it. I'm going to walk through the two builds that are kind of circulating right now. One is the Maul build, and the other one is the Disco Druid Moonfire build. And talk a little bit about how you can take advantage of both builds, but really, after testing, it's also something that I kind of want to talk about. I haven't been able to test it on M+ yet, but I have been able to test just based on heroics and stuff like that. So I've seen how it plays, and then I've done a whole lot of dummy testing as well. And I've got some comparisons from last weekend's beta build as well to share with you guys. So we'll rush through the class tree here real quick, just because this one's unchanged for the most part. So we'll immediately start by picking up Swipe, Killer Instinct, all three, and then Iron Fur. We'll jump up here to improve Bark Skin to increase the duration of Bark Skin, and then Frenzy Regen and Bark Skin's healing received by 20% Verdant Heart. We're left over with one before we can go into the next group of talents, so we'll go ahead and drop one into Starfire. We're going to immediately come down here, grab our Interrupt. We're going to grab Thick Hide for the flat 6% DR for all damage. We're going to grab Soothe. We're going to grab Stampeding Roar. We're going to grab Matted Fur, which is going to give you an Absorb Shield for 20k. This is one of the things that needs to be addressed because they did just increase the health pools for everyone at level 70. And this is still a flat 20k Absorb Shield. It really needs to be percentage based on your health pool. This is just a really bad talent right now because of how big the health trees are at level 70, and I'll show you guys that here in a second. So after that, we've got 6 points that we need to drop before we can go down into here. So I'm just going to pick up what's necessary before we can drop down. So I'll go into Star Surge. We'll get our Moonfire form. We'll get into Astral Influence. Then we'll come back here to the Nurturing Instinct. We'll drop 2 points for now. And then we're going to come down to the bottom portion here to pick up what's mandatory here. Lycura's Teachings, mandatory, so dropped all 3 points in there, which, by the way, these 3-point nodes, I mean, they're not fun. There's 3 of them in the class tree alone, and it's just, every other class tree has just more variety. We'll then pick up Renewal, and then we will come over here, and we will pick up Incapacitating Roar, if you're doing M+, or Mighty Bash, whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you would prefer here. And now we've got 6 points left to spend, and this is where you can get a little bit flexible. The way that I would go about doing it is to finish off the Nurturing Instinct, because I'm going to lean into the Moonfire build. And even when you're not going into the Moonfire build, there's not a whole lot of points to put elsewhere that make a lot of sense anyway, so you're going to do this either way. I'm going to grab my Typhoon for my mob control. I'm going to grab 2 points into Well-Honed Instincts. And then from here, I'm going to pick up my Charge, because I can. And I've got a free point. Do with it as you will. If you would prefer, you can go ahead and grab Sunfire, and then get out of Charge and drop into either Mass Entanglement or Ursul's Vortex. Whatever you want. Completely fine. Up to you. Protector of the Pack is just not good for Bear right now. It takes you out of Bear form. There's not a whole lot of opportunity for that unless you're in Raid. So we'll go in and grab our Charge ability, just because it feels a little bit more natural with it, but there's definitely ways that you can build this without going into Charge. It's just a matter of preference. So this is the class tree, and I wanted to blitz through that real quick because that really has gone pretty much unchanged. Now, we'll go ahead and jump into the Guardian tree as if we're building the Maul build. So we'll first start off by taking mandatory Maul. We'll grab Gore. We'll grab Survival Instincts. We will grab our Mangle. We will grab Ursine Adept. And then I'm going to grab Brambles, but you can go either Brambles or Bristling Fur here. And then I'm going to go ahead and jump into my first Berserk. And you'll notice that there's a couple of additional pathings open up here, so you can come either way. Before you had to go through Gory Fur, you no longer have to do that anymore to get over to where Moonfire was. You'll notice that that is moved. But we're building out Maul anyway, so we're going to go over to the left side to start. So I'm going to go Innate Resolve, and I'm going to take what I absolutely have to take here. The first of which would be Vulnerable Flesh. This is where Maul has a 30% chance to critically strike. I'm then going to jump into my Flashing Claws, which is going to increase, or give me an extra proc chance of 20% to have proc an extra Thrash whenever I hit Thrash. And then you can either come one of two ways. You can go Vicious Cycle, or you can go Tooth and Claw. Both of these are 1-point nodes here. You're honestly going to want to end up taking both, because Tooth and Claw is where your auto attacks have a 20% chance to empower your next Maul. And that's going to stack up to 2 times. And then your Vicious Cycle is where your Mangle is going to increase the damage of your Maul, and your Maul is going to increase the damage of your Mangle. So you're going to want to go ahead and grab both of those. You're going to want to grab Unchecked Aggression for Berserk, because this is the one that increases your haste by 15%, and then also reduces the rage cost of Maul by 50% as well. And then I'm going to pop back up into, again, what's mandatory. We for sure need to take Fury of Nature, because we're going to want to get into Incarn, so I'm going to pick up those 2 now, and I've got 3 left over. You can do one of 2 things. You can either grab a Gory Fur, or you can grab Soul of the Forest to make this work. They both essentially do the same thing, but for a Maul build, Soul of the Forest is actually a little bit stronger, because it's going to increase your Mangle damage by 25%, and you'll be rotating between Mangle and Maul pretty frequently. So I'm going to come over here to Layered Main, and then I'm going to grab my Soul of the Forest now. Then I'm going to jump down here to Reinvigoration. I'm going to grab Ursac's Fury, and I'm going to grab Rend and Tear so that I have my 6% DR when I stack my 3 Thrashes on a target. So now I've got 6 points left to finish building out my Maul Bear. I'll first do that by grabbing Circle of Life and Death. This is where your damage over time effects are going to deal you their damage in 25% less time, and your healing over time in 15% less time. So this is also going to affect your Frenzied Regen. I'm going to grab my Incarn, and I've got 4 points left now. So a few things that we can do here. I'm going to hold on Ursac's Guidance for now, because this is a 3-minute cooldown as is. If you grab Ursac's Guidance, it's going to put you at about 2 minutes to 2 minutes and 20 seconds, realistically, just based on spending as much rage as you can during your cooldown window for this. So that's certainly good. But we've got 4 points to spend in other places here. So Reinforced Fur is decent, not required though. This is where your Iron Fur increases your armor by an additional 4%, and Bark Skinning reduces the damage taken by an additional 5%. So not overly strong, definitely worth at least 1 point, but we have options. You also have the ability to drop down to Loon's Favored and pick this up. You also can go into this third Berserk, which is Persistence, and that's going to reduce the cooldown of Frenzied Regen by 100%, and the cost of Iron Fur by 50%. So this one, you don't have to pick up, mainly because if you spec into this, you want your Iron Fur to cost more anyway, to reduce the cooldown faster. But for the sake of just kind of showing where you can go with this, I'm going to go ahead and grab that. As you can see, I'm kind of gated here because I have to have a 2-point gate from Scintillating Moonlight, and then I'm left with only 1. and you can go Galactic Guardian here. Instead of that, what I would say is come back up, grab Earth Warden, especially as you get into harder hitting content. You're going to need Earth Warden to stay alive, especially with the way that Bear is being built right now. You're going to want to come up and grab your Reinforced Fur. You're going to want to come up and grab your second Survival Instincts. But what I'm left with here is just kind of 1 point floating to put wherever I want. I'm going to get more bang for my buck by putting into either Ursek's Guidance or Elun's Favor, just depending on the content. I'm just going to go ahead and put it here for now, and this is my Maul build. This is an awful build because it's still a very heavy single target build. There's really no single target in Mythic Plus. Only one of the 8 bosses is single target in Raid. So as much as this is appealing, because they buffed Maul by 40% the damage done, and you've got all these talents here that increases the damage of Maul and makes it so that Maul and Mangle and all the synergy with the set bonuses are going to play out nicely, or so you think. You're still only hitting a single target with Maul, and it's an incredible rage dump. So in order to make something like this work, they're going to have to make the cost of Maul free. They're going to have to put it off of the GCD. There's a bunch of things that they need to do to really make this a viable build. And therefore, I would say that this is kind of a non-build. I see a lot of this kind of floating out as like, hey, this could be a good alternative now that they moved down the Moonfire stuff, but it's really not. So now I'll go ahead and I'll walk you guys through what the Moonfire build looks like, the Disco Bear build. And it's pretty much the same stuff to start it off. It's Gore, Survival Instincts. You're going to grab your Ursine Adept. You're going to grab your Mangle. You're going to grab your first Berserk here for Ravage. And we're going to grab Brambles, and we're going to grab Innate Resolve. Now I'm working my way down here, so I'm going to start going right to start here. I'm going to grab my Layered Mane. I'm going to grab my Reinforced, or I'm going to grab Soul of the Forest, actually, just because you're still going to be mangling with this build whatever Gore procs, especially with the 4-piece set bonus. I'm going to grab my Persistence, since that's my gate over here. And then I'm going to come back over this way. I'm going to pick up my Flashing Claws. I'm going to pick up my Earth Warden. And now I still have 5 points that I need to drop before I can advance down here. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go ahead and pop Reinforced Fur, grab my Nature, or Fury of Nature. I still have 2 left over. And you can go a couple of different ways with it. I personally don't feel like you need to hit anything that we haven't hit already. Like, there's no need to go through after the Wildlife or Guardian of Elune. There's no need to kind of go through and path through here, which is, I think, kind of what they wanted you to do originally. Instead, what I like to do here is I'll come into Gory first, so I'm kind of double dipping here, and then go into Survival of the Fittest, or just drop that and go right into Survival of the Fittest so that you've got 2 stacks there, because it's really kind of an either-or thing. And this is not nearly as strong when you're not going with the Maul build anyway. This one, Gory Fur, is where Mangle has a 15% chance to reduce the rage cost of your next Iron Fur by 25%. And Iron Fur becomes your primary rage dump anyway with the Moonfire build. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to go ahead and get the talents that make the Moonfire build go. And then I'll show you guys the flexibility. So we'll go Scintillating Moonlight, our twin Moonfire, and Galactic Guardian. This is what procs your free Moonfire. This is what makes Moonfire hit 2 targets. And this is just the ridiculous 2-point dump in order to get to these other 2. I now have 6 points left. I have access to Rage of the Sleeper, but Rage of the Sleeper is not Legacy of the Sleeper. It is not what it is in Shadowlands at all. All it is a flat 25% damage DR with reflecting a portion of that. So it is not, it's missing the leech component. You still maintain control of your character. You won't, succumb to any loss of character effects, so that part's nice, but it's not really required for what we're trying to do. I'm then going to come over here and I'm going to grab my Circle of Life and Death. I'm going to grab my Incarn. I'm going to grab Elune's Favored to increase the throughput of my Moonfire damage. This is also going to help with my DR because it's going to give me some self-healing as well. And I've got my 3 points left now. So what am I going to do with these 3 points? Well, this is where we have a couple of options. You can go ahead and pick up This other Berserk, which is Unchecked Aggression, this is what gives you 15% haste. The other effect is for Maul. You don't really need to do that. Reinvigoration is going to reduce your cooldown on Frenzied Regen. So that is one option there. You can also go ahead and drop either Circle of Life and Death or Alun's Favor, and we can go ahead and pick up Ursac's Fury. So this is where I say this is kind of a net neutral change. I still have access to all the things that I had access to before with this build. It just, there's a very roundabout way to get there, which makes it a pain in the butt, and I have to take an extra Berserk that I don't really necessarily need to take. So I'm sinking essentially 3 points to get to Ursac's Fury, and this is the nerfed version of only 30% shield and not the 70% shield that it was originally. So that's the bummer there. The other thing that I can do is I can, instead of doing that, I can go ahead and give myself Rage of the Sleeper for a flat 25% DR outside of my Incarn window. I can go ahead and spec into Circle of Life and Death this way, and then I'm able to come down and reduce the cooldown of Incarn as well, and then I have one floating point to kind of drop wherever I want, which should probably be an improved Survival Instincts for higher keys. As you can see, the problem is that no matter what, I'm generally giving up if I want to... I have to give up some tankiness, which is really in the form of Survival Instincts, in order to get throughput. Now, I mentioned I was going to kind of compare the way in which Guardian was performing versus other tanks, and right now, both in pre-patch as well as on beta, Vengeance Demon Hunter is doing really well. Well, when I run the same dungeon at the same Mythic Plus level, with the same comp outside of just the tank that I'm running, my Vengeance Demon Hunter is doing 45 to 55% more damage than my Guardian Druid's capable of doing. And that was before these changes were done. And so this is not really a substantial change to the damage that we're doing, but it is a substantial change to our overall effectiveness and tankiness. And I don't know who this change is for, in all honesty, and that's the part that really kind of bugs me. So let's talk a little bit about how you can fix this cluster that Blizzard has done to this tree, because this thing's an absolute mess. It really kind of bothers me that the Maul build to the left here is still in place and right in the middle of the meat. It's the meat of the tree, but this has now become kind of the capstone. And it doesn't really make sense, because I really don't want to take Rage of the Sleeper in the current form that it's in. Blood Frenzy is not, it's just not good. You don't necessarily have to take the faster cooldown, especially if you're being forced into Rage of the Sleeper, but at the same time, you have to give up a whole lot. I have to give up probably Circle of Life and Death to get 4 points back if I want to come back in here and do something like that, so that I can get Ursac's Fury, so I can get my passive Thrash. I can also go a step further here and spec out of Rage of the Sleeper to get Rend and Tear, so I can get my flat 6% DR as well. So, I mean, everything I'm doing to make sure that I'm getting the talents that I was getting before means that I have to take something out of somewhere else. So taking out of Incarn, you're just never going to do that, first of all. So we're gonna keep Incarn. You would, if you want to give up Twin Moonfire, you can do that, and you could come in here. But either way, it's a net loss or net neutral depending on the way in which you spec and how you play. The only other thing I did try, and this was just for the sake of just fun and just trying to see if the playstyle would work this way, is I went ahead and I went into Convoke, and I went into Twin Moonfire, and I made a couple of tweaks on the class specialization side, where I actually took some points out over here, Well-Honed Instincts, and I went into Improved Sunfire, and I went full on, like, hey, what would this thing look like if I could go pure Convoke? So, you know, this was essentially what the build looked like. I think I did something like that. And I managed to sustain like 36k DPS, just kind of doing the chicken weaving thing, which you sort of can do in M+, it just kind of depends. It was something that was done in Season 1 of Shadowlands. It was actually pretty fun, but a lot of people, would end up dead because they weren't so great at it. So where I'm going with this is I feel like in order for Blizzard to kind of fix the major damage gap that they have between Guardian Druid and every other tank, because I'm sustaining about 17k DPS on a normal build where I'm in Incarn, and I've got this other stuff going here. So just try to revert back to normal as I can. In a build like this, it's like 17k, but on my Vengeance, I mentioned I'm north of 30k. On my Prot Warrior, I'm north of 30k. On the Paladin, I'm roughly 30k. On the Monk, when I'm not falling over, I'm about 30k. On M+10 and above, like that's pretty standard overall. Guardian's the one that's sitting at 17k, and it's pretty pathetic. So I think what they need to do is they kind of need to revert these things. If not putting them back to where they were, then at least, first of all, this should be a 1-point talent. There's too many 2-point talents in here that are just kind of, they obviously ran out of ideas. So they need to do something where they move the meat of the Disco Bear build up into the middle, similar to Maul. They're on the right track with what they're doing with Maul, but they need to make Maul hit more than one target, and they need to take it off of the GCD to make it worth speccing into. The other thing they need to do is they need to separate Incarn, and they need to separate Convoke the Spirits. What I noticed is that in pre-patch, Guardian Druid is just absolutely trucking. It is really, really, really good. I mean, it's a lot of fun to play, but it's because our one capstone being, Incarn in pre-patch is better than, quite frankly, the other tank's capstones as far as throughput. When we get to the second capstone, we don't really have one. There's nothing that is going to increase our overall throughput. So if we had the ability to take Incarn and then Ursac's Guidance and Convoke the Spirits and Ursac's Guidance, something like that, if we were able to have both of these available to us at the same time, I think that would do a lot to help Guardian Druid's damage, because if we were able to cast Convoke as just part of our core rotation, that would make up a major deficit. I'm sure Blizzard's worried about scaling and what that looks like once we have gear and once we're in the 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 version of the game. But that's something that they should tune as they go. There's no reason to release Guardian Druid in the state that it's in right now. So what I would say is they need to separate Convoke, separate Incarn. Instead of having this be a choice node, they just need to make them capstone nodes on either side. And then that way you're forced to pick one or the other, and just have the Ursac's Guidance built into either one of those. It just doesn't make sense to do it the way that they've got it right now. These other talents over here are just too weak. Gory Fur and Soul of Forest, neither one is overly attractive. You just kind of have to take one of them to fill out the tree. But other than that, Guardian Druid's just not in a state for release, unfortunately. The damage is just not there. And then, as you can see, I don't even have my second charge of Survival Instincts to make this whole thing go. So when you're talking about high keys and you're talking about Mythic Raid, you're going to be in a weird situation when you don't necessarily have that defensive, and you're relying on flat damage reduction with both your Moonfires, or if you're able to spec into Rend and Tear, your Thrash being a 6% DR, and then just the other things in the tree like Thick Hide giving you just the flat damage reduction. And it's just kind of a bummer that the tree works this way when all the other tank trees are a little bit more intuitive, or a lot more intuitive, just kind of depending. Even Monk, at least you know that you're kind of a glass cannon tank and that you're able to just absolutely slap right now, but you're going to have to do a little bit of kiting. Monk also is a little bit broken right now, and that needs addressing. But as far as Guardian Druid, this is something that's very fixable. They're pretty darn close to it right now. I'm hoping that they don't go live this way, but I just wanted to kind of showcase a couple of things that they could do to make this tree actually work. But the Maul spec, don't run it. It's not going to do what you need it to do, even in Raid. You're going to have to figure out something with the Moonfire build in order to make it go. So, love to hear your comments, love to hear your feedback. But right now, Rage's Sleeper, not good. Ursac's Fury, not good. And we just don't have enough points to do what we need to do a little CYA, cover our ass as far as all the different encounters, all the different dungeons, everything that's coming out. Guardian is just not going to be in a good spot if it releases this way. So